Hello, Simmers, and welcome to Frankfurt am Main in Germany, where we will take a closer look at the RotateSim MD11 released Thursday, March 24th. And boy, is it a beautiful 3D model, as you can see when we pan around the airplane. 3D modeling is excellent. I noticed there's a lot of hatred in the forums and on Facebook. But this is a very complex add-on. And of course there are still, still some bugs that need to be addressed by the RotateSim team. But that doesn't mean that you can't already fly the airplane. It's just that you have to take some things into consideration. And with this video I want to give you an objective and honest review of this software add-on as it is right now. There is still some work that needs to be done, and some of the bugs raise some questions about the quality of the beta testing program that they run at RotateSim. But despite the few bugs, I still think it's a nice add-on. If you only fly online, I would wait with purchasing it at least until they have released a hotfix for the heading system. There is a bug where the airplane tends to turn into the wrong direction, which makes it quite hard to follow vector instructions by ATC. So if you only fly online, I wouldn't buy this right now. I would wait with the purchase until some of the issues have been fixed. Now let's just jump into the flight deck to get rid of some of the background noise. As you can see, the flight deck is beautifully modeled. Very, very nice 3D artwork. And the weathering on the airplane is just amazing. It's really, you get the feeling of being inside an airplane that has been used thoroughly. I love it. But anyway, as mentioned, there is some issues. So I'm not going to lie about that. I just purchased the plane. I am not part of the Rotate development team whatsoever. I'm just another simmer who just, well, first of all, I'm a sucker for Trijet, so I was delighted that it finally released after 5 years. I've been anticipating this one since it was first announced back in 2017. I had some hopes that because of the long development project, it would release as a bug-free add-on. Unfortunately, that is not the case. But let's just perform a flight. I have prepared a short haul flight from Frankfurt to Amsterdam. It's going to take us, it's like 50 minutes, 53 I think, something like that. Let's see, trip 48-minute flight today, which will bring us from Frankfurt am Main in Germany to the northwest to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So let me just put in the flight plan in here and set Active Sky also to the sim. So if you buy this airplane, first thing you have to do, of course, is set it up for a flight, and you can do that via a very intuitive menu. You just go to the plugins menu, go to Rotate MD11, then Aircraft menu. You first land on the options page where you can switch between Celsius, Fahrenheit, kilogram versus pounds, liters versus a gallon. Well, I'm from Europe, so I'm a metric guy, so I switched on the kilograms and liter options. You can switch between inches and hectopascals for the default setting. So I set it default to hectopascals, but if you only fly in the US, you can just leave this off and you have inches standard. I switched on the option to synchronize the barometer settings on the first officer and the captain side. And well, I use the 8.33 kilohertz channel spacing. You can also quick load some other situations, but we'll just have it cold and dark for now. In the load manager, you can adjust the load of both the cargo and the fuel of the airplane. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. You can also set some ground operations, you can operate all sorts of doors, and there is a very extensive failure menu. So, well, my father used to work at KLM before his retirement, and KLM operated the MD11 for quite a long time. And when the airplane retired from the fleet, one of his former co-workers remembered that I was an aviation enthusiast, and as a goodbye present, and he also knew that I was a big fan of the MD11. So as a goodbye present, he gave me a normal checklist and an emergency checklist, official documents by KLM as they were used in the flight deck. This one is from 1998. He had them at home, so he gave them to me. So I have an official emergency checklist. So I think it's it will be a lot of fun for the future when the airplane has received a couple of bug fixes to maybe put in some failures sometime and work through the failures with the emergency checklist. That's not for this flight, but it's something that I have in mind for the future. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, ground operations. We want ground power, so you just press request. We want cockpit stairs, and I want the cockpit door to be open. Now, as you can see, there's no possibility to ask for fuel or load, and that's because we haven't set the required amount of cargo and fuel in the load manager. So that's what we'll do first. Now, in the load manager, you get this screen, a couple of sliders. You can adjust weights by moving the slider, or you can just type in any value in this column here. It works very intuitive. You can also, if you are really diehard, go to extended controls and you can set each compartment individually. I like to stick to simple for this flight. It's just a basic first impression, and this will get you on your way the quickest. So let's take a look at our flight plan. We are Lufthansa Cargo, flight 5621 from Frankfurt to Amsterdam. We are an MD11F with CF6 ADC2D1F engines. The destination elevation is -11 feet, that is correct. The cost index will be 164 today, with economy speed, an average fuel flow of 8,082 kilos per hour, and an average wind component of +1. In Western Europe we have a very strong high pressure area at the moment, which gives beautiful weather, at least for this weekend. And we had it for the past couple of weeks. Anyway, the planned load is 80,524 kilos, which will give us a zero fuel weight of 199,446. So let's start by loading 80,524 kilos. So just go in here, 80,200 and what did we say? 524. There it is. Now it should result, according to the flight plan, in a zero fuel weight of 199,000 kilos. Well, that's not the case. We are 195,400. But as you can see, we are very close to the maximum payload that we are allowed to bring on board. Now you can play around with the payload center of gravity. We'll do that in a minute. But first let's take a closer look at our fuel that is required. Now, the amount of fuel that is required in the Lufthansa flight plans is on the third page, and it's these lines. Now, what does it say? It says trip fuel 6,478 kilos. So 6,478 kilos of trip fuel. And trip fuel is only the amount of fuel that will bring you from A to B. So in our case, from Frankfurt to Amsterdam. When we only load 6,478 kilos of fuel, we are able to take off in Frankfurt, fly to Amsterdam and land there, and that's just about it. We'll probably be landing on the last drops in the tank, so that's not enough. So you always take a minimum amount of contingency fuel with you. In our case, 2,021 kilos, which is sufficient for 15 minutes. We have an alternate today that is Düsseldorf. So our alternates The amount of fuel required to reach it is 4,627 kilos, and it will take us 34 minutes to fly there. Every airplane needs to be able to hold for 30 minutes at 1500 feet at the alternate, or if there is no alternate, at the destination airport. And that is transferred or translated into an amount of fuel, in our case 3,110. If you add up these numbers, you'll get a planned takeoff fuel of 16,236. But before we can take off, we also need to taxi to the runway. And well, let's just assume that that is going to take us 907 kilos. So in the taxi fuel, we enter 907 kilos. And if you add 907 to 16,236, that will be 17,143 kilos. And that will be the block fuel. So in block fuel, we enter the planned takeoff, added to that the taxi fuel. So in our case, 17,143. And that is now set. Now, if I apply this load configuration, the takeoff center of gravity is 27.2%, and that is not good enough. You are always looking for a takeoff center of gravity value between 30 and 31% according to the manual. And you can adjust this by moving the payload slider. Move it to the left and the number will go down. Move it to the right and the number will go up. So let's say 30.5% is good enough for us today. If you're happy with all this, just press apply load configuration to aircraft and FMS. And you can see the airplane is moving a little bit because of all the weight that is now on board. And with this, we are good to start up the airplane. And when you go to ground operations, you can now call for fuel service. It's not available on the Aerosoft airport. And you can also select load aircraft, close the menu, and when you look from the outside, you can clearly see that the cargo is being brought and it's being loaded. I think the animation in itself is a little bit on the fast side. I think this door opens a little bit fast. I think everything is just fast. And what's a little bit disappointing is when the containers are on board and you walk into the cargo bay, they are not visible there anymore. Contrary to the INI builds A300, they have done that much better than this add-on. But this add-on, the positive side of not being able to see much in the cargo bay, is that the performance is actually really nice. And I saw a lot of people on the Facebook page and etc. asking for what the performance is. So I leave the frames per second counter running in the top left corner of the screen, so you can just see throughout all stages of the flight what the performance is. Now we're flying into Amsterdam. That's a very good benchmark because the scenery that I have in Amsterdam is a modified Aerosoft scenery. There's lots of OSM data in Amsterdam. I have Zoom level 17 ortho tiles. There's a lot of other airports in the Netherlands that I have. So the scenery load is heavy, and usually the performance that I get in the sim in Amsterdam is the poorest for any place on the planet, maybe except for London. But if you see frames per second at or above 20 frames per second in Amsterdam, that means that the performance of this plane is good. If I fly more, especially if it's on the top range of that, say 25 to 30, when I fly really heavy add-ons, sometimes it's struggling to get 20 on my system. I will leave the system specs in the description of the video below. But anyway, let's start by starting the airplane. So the first thing we have to do is switch on the battery. And by the way, big disclaimer, I'm not a professional pilot. I'm not an MD11 trained pilot. I'm not saying that this is the only way how you can operate the airplane or how you should operate the airplane. But this is a way to operate the airplane that brings you from A to B. It's a first impressions video. I haven't had time to deep dive the manual, so you will see some stuff that is probably wrong. But at least it will get you from A to B, and it will show you what you get with this airplane in its current state. Now we have set the external power, so switch that one on. Nav lights are automatically on in this airplane, so we just arm the emergency lights. We'll set the no smoking lights on, as well as the seatbelt signs. Now on the aft overhead, we can first start with an engine APU fire warning test. Just press this button and hold it.
Engine 1 fire. Engine 2 fire. Engine 3 fire.
So that test is now completed. And what we can also do is set the or check the ground proximity warning system. So move this one down to test. And this sound effect, I'm not really sure whether it's what it is like in the real airplane. It sounds a bit stuttery or something. Just listen.
Glide slope. Pull up. Terrain. Pull up. Sink rate. Pull up. Terrain. Pull up. Don't sink. Too low. Terrain. Too low. Gear. Too low. Flaps. Too low. Terrain. Glide slope.
So as you can hear, I don't think it's it doesn't sound very smooth in some way. There's plenty of other airplanes that have this that sound much better. So I'm not really sure whether that is the case in the real world MD11, but I think this sound effect needs a little bit of work. If you are watching this video and you happen to know if it is really like this in real life, just leave a comment and I'm happy with that, but it strikes me as odd, let me put it that way. Then we have to align the IRS. So if you move the first switch to nav and you wait a couple of seconds, you will get an automatic cargo fire test. And that is now completed. So we'll also set the system 2 to nav and the auxiliary system to nav. And the first thing that I always do now is go down to the McDo and align the IRS in here. Let me just clear these messages. So go to FMC1, make sure that the model is correct, the database is accurate, and then we go to flight plan init. Now we're going to fly from Frankfurt to Amsterdam. What I really like, by the way, are the click spots in this airplane. They're very intuitive, and contrary to some other add-ons that I've reviewed in the past, I've never missed a click spot. The only one that is quite difficult is the runway turn off left light. That is sometimes a little bit puzzle to get it right, but especially on the FMC it's so easy to program this. So let's just put in the alternate Echo Delta Delta Lima, and now we can initialize the IRS, and if you press pause rev, you can actually see the LED longitude that the system is aligning to. So you can verify on some charts whether this is correct. I find in the previous flights that I did from Frankfurt that this is correct, so I'm not going to bother about it now. But in this page you can check and if necessary alter the latitude and longitude that the system is aligning to. So let's go back to flight plan init. Flight number today, that is Golf Echo Charlie 5621. And our cruise flight level for today is flight level 240. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, flight level 240, so that is correct. So we'll just enter that one in here. If you do a long haul, you can set a lot of different flight levels here for automated step climbs. I haven't done that yet. There is an issue with the LNAV, especially on medium to long haul flights. I did one medium haul flight from Rome to Keflavik, and I did encounter that the LNAV system, so to speak, was basically disengaged. It happened somewhere in here. I had to fly over the UK and it started to turn right, and I was away from the computer for a while. I just noticed it when I was in front of Belgium, so With a direct 2 I was able to correct it, but it was not behavior that you would expect from a payware add-on at this price with this time of development. So there's clearly an issue with LNAV on longer flights. On the short haul that we are going to do with this video, I haven't had any issues whatsoever with it. So don't know what's causing the issue, but just for your information. For long haul flights, right now I will not use the Rotate MD-11 until a hotfix is released for that issue. So cost index is 164. So 164 in the cost index window. And here we have now filled all the boxes. So go to the next page. This is the weight initialization. And what we have to do is we just have to click all the line selector keys to confirm these weights. Now you get some not allowed. Everything is set correctly. So we have that 30.5% takeoff center of gravity. Gross weight 212,600 kilos, so we are quite heavy. And we have 30 minutes of final time, so that is good. The trip fuel is not correct, but I cannot alter that for some reason. 0.9 on the taxi is correct, but the amount of trip fuel that I've entered, 6478, is not being displayed in here. It's only half of that somehow. So there's something to be done in here, but I can't seem to alter that. So if I say 6.4, just doesn't work. But anyway, these numbers are correct. We have 17,100 kilos of fuel on board. So having set the weight initialization as well as the flight initialization, there's no ballast fuel for this flight. So we can now proceed with entering the flight plan. So from Frankfurt we will take off using runway 7 center. And we're gonna fly the Marin 5 Echo departure. So insert. And then from the Marin waypoint we'll fly airway Yankee 152 to RPAC. So if you want to enter an airway, just press the left line selector key next to the last waypoint. Go to airways, and then you can enter all that information. So Yankee 152 to RPAC. And then it's Zulu 850 to EHAM, Hotel Mike Mike. Yes, they actually have a town in Germany called Han. Let's see, then we fly the Tango 281 to Norku. So Tango 281 to Norku. And insert that. Because from Norku we will fly an arrival into Amsterdam. So that's going to be star, which is the Norku to Alpha arrival. We will land runway 36 right, transitioning via the RTIP waypoint. So let's insert that. This is now all in here. Now what you can clearly see here is that the IRS is now aligned. So we have the nav display operational, so we can go to the plan mode. And when you walk through your flight plan, you will see on the display here each and every waypoint. And you can check that your flight plan is intact, that there are no route discontinuities and no strange patterns emerging on the route as you have entered it. Now I want to change something in my arrival into Amsterdam, because what it now gives me is the normal procedure And that's basically flying from RTIP to Sierra Papa Lima and then make a very sharp left-hand turn outbound and then this. However, what you will see most airplanes in real life fly when they come in from the east is the RNF transition via Alpha Mike 669. And I want to enter this route into my McDo. So I want to fly from RTIP to INBAM, Alpha Mike 665, Alpha Mike 667, Alpha Mike 668, then Alpha Mike 669, which is also called NUCO, and that is already in there, but we're gonna alter our arrival. So if you want to do that, basically what I want to do is, after RTIP, get rid of Sierra Papa Lima, and from RTIP we will fly to INBAM. So I can just enter INBAM in here. After INBAM, we're going to fly Alpha Mike 665. From Alpha Mike 665, we continue to Alpha Mike 667. Alpha Mike 667 to Alpha Mike 668. And from Alpha Mike 668 is basically down to Alpha Mike 669, but as mentioned, that is the same waypoint as the so-called NUCO waypoint. That is on the original route that we have entered. So you can leave NUCO in there, but what we'll do for today is delete NUCO and replace that with Alpha Mike 669 to fully comply with the chart. So first let's clear all these waypoints. Now there's NUCO, let's delete that one as well. Then we'll put in Alpha Mike 669 in here, clear the discontinuity. And then we have Alpha Mike 636 down to the runway. So when I look at this right now, I'll fly from RTIP to INBAM, Alpha Mike 665, Alpha Mike 667, Alpha Mike 668, Alpha Mike 669, 636, 635, runway 36 right. In case of a go around, 637, 163. Go around altitude will be 2000. Missed approach altitude will be 2000 feet. So now I'm happy with the lateral flight plan. I will just set this one back to the start of the route. And switch this one back to the map display. And now we can set the takeoff page. So takeoff approach. First thing we have to do is enter a flex temperature. Well, let's just enter a flex temperature of 50. We have to set our takeoff flaps. Let's set that to 15. That will result in a stabilizer setting of 4.8 on the trim. Now runway slope is 0, and let's just listen to the airport weather information. Let's switch on VHF 1.
Echo Delta Delta Foxtrot airport information Juliet 1150 Zulu weather wind 027 at 12 visibility 10,000 sky clear temperature 172.2 QNH 1030 advise on initial contact that you have information Juliet.
Alright, so information Juliet on board, QNH 1030.
Echo Delta.
And we have 12 knot headwind coming in from the front left. Outside air temperature is 17, so I just entered slope 0, head 12. Not really sure whether that is correct, by the way. I don't know how you have to set the wind component. Whether that's the wind strength or the wind heading. I haven't figured that one out. I still have to deep dive the manuals as said. For now I just put in 12 knots. We'll see how that works out. At least I haven't crashed doing it in that way. 17 degrees Celsius on the outside air temperature, so 17 Celsius in here. and that will give us the V speeds V1 137, rotate 159 and V2 at 164. So this is all working right as it is supposed to. Let's just set the standby artificial horizon correct, set the flight plan in here, takeoff page in here. Oh, by the way, you can see when you start the airplane that the gear lever is down but the lights are red. You can just hover your mouse over it till you get the down arrow, click, and that will lock the gear and make the lights green as they are supposed to be. So we have step trim 4.8, well it's right now 3.0. And as soon as we have hydraulic pressure we can set the trim. What we have to do before we can do that is set this one to the hydraulic page. This will give the hydraulic system, and then we can run the hydraulic pressure test. Open this cover, then press this button, and you will see on this screen that hydraulic pressure test is now in operation. In a few minutes you will see that the numbers here rise and then drop again, and then when the test is complete this line will just disappear. What I will do is preset the radar to be tilted up. Don't think we're gonna need weather radar, there's no significant weather. It's clear skies. And our flight number today is 5621. Let's just say that that's also our squawk code. When I fly offline I like to set my flight number as the squawk code, so I cannot forget it. Of course in real life ATC will give you a squawk code. That has got nothing to do with your flight number. Or it doesn't have to be like your flight number, let me put it that way. Anyway, we continue the preparation of our departure. We're gonna fly the Marin 5 Echo departure out of 07 right, 07 center, correction. So we have an initial climb clearance of 5,000 feet. Let's dial that one in here. And an initial heading of 068. Dial that one in here. Now in many other planes like the Boeings you are used to setting your V2 speed in the altitude window in here. But I've read the manual so far that it says that you can, prior to takeoff, just set the maximum speed below 10,000 knots in this window. That is 250 knots. So that is already in here, so we'll just leave it like that. It works fine. So no worries, just leave this at 250. As you can see, the hydraulic test light is now extinguished, so let's go up here. Test is completed, let's close this cover. We can set the emergency power on. And there are no strange lights for the current configuration. What we can do is start our APU. Press the start stop button in here. That will start the system. And if you set your engine display in here, you can see information about the APU spooling up. And what we can do on the overhead panel, by the way, is set the defog on and also switch on the windshield heat prior to takeoff. During flight I always switch on the anti-ice, no matter what the conditions are. I saw a stream, I think it was Captain Canada, and he mentioned that the airplane is very vulnerable to icing, at least in this add-on, so I just always switch it on. Now another thing to keep in mind when you fly this airplane, I found that the SimBrief performance file for the MD11F is a little bit optimistic. For instance, for my medium haul flight from Rome to Keflavik, the flight plan told me that I should fly at flight level 350, while the airplane was actually quite heavily loaded and it wasn't capable of maintaining that altitude. Now I think there's a reason why you have in the initialization page so many boxes for step climbs. Always keep thinking yourself. Don't fly to flight level 350 immediately when you are very heavily loaded. There's no airplane on this planet that can do that in real life, and this one can't do that either in the sim. It's very common for airplanes, especially heavy planes on long haul flights, to initially climb to like flight level 240, 280, something like that. Fly for a couple of hours to burn fuel, then go to 300, then burn more fuel, then climb to 320. For instance, I did flights with the Felis 747 from Amsterdam to San Francisco a couple of times. You start by climbing out flight level 280, and it's not until you are on the other side of the Atlantic that you start to approach flight level 340, and it's not like 1.5 hours prior to arrival that you can continue to climb to 360. So if you get a flight plan, always keep thinking yourself and keep asking yourself, is it realistic to fly a heavy plane to that altitude? And usually it's not. I don't know where SimBrief got the performance information for their performance file, but it does seem to be off. And as a result, I read a lot of comments on the Facebook Rotate MD11 page or on the support forums where people say, yeah, the airplane isn't capable of holding altitude. It stalls. Yeah, well, that means that you are too heavy to fly on that altitude. So if you see that the airplane has its engines on full power and it is still, the speed is decreasing, you're not gonna sit back, relax and watch the airplane stall. You just descend to a lower altitude that the airplane can fly. I mean, that's just basic pilot skills. So it's not because there are some numbers on a flight plan telling you that you should be there that everything just has to work. Always keep thinking yourself and remain critical of the information that you see. For instance, I once had a flight plan from SimBrief, also on the route from Amsterdam to Frankfurt, where they wanted me to climb with a heavy MD11 to fly level 370. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You can't even reach that flight level before you reach your top of descent. So I just thought, well, it's alright, but I just climbed to flight level 260 and everything was fine. So keep thinking yourself. Don't just go blind on the numbers on any profile. You're the pilot. If you see that something isn't working out, you intervene. It's that simple. And it doesn't mean that the add-on is rotten. There is bugs. Again, it's not perfect right now, but it's not bad either. And if you know how to fly this thing, you can have a lot of fun with it already, especially on shorter routes. Anyway, we have loaded the McDo's. The APU is started, so we can set the APU power on. We can set the APU air on. That will set back 2 first, then you will see 1, 2 and 1, 3 isolation turn on, and then back 1 and back 3. So that's all good. We can switch the external power off. And we can also dismiss the external power. We can close the cockpit door. And we can remove the cockpit stairs. I will preset the pushback.
Ground to cockpit. Plan acknowledged. Call me through the menu when you're ready.
Alright, so let's run some checklists here. So power up checklist, well, exterior safety inspection was completed, cockpit safety items were checked, aircraft maintenance log is checked, circuit breakers checked, they are not modeled by the way, the circuit breakers. Emergency power is off, battery is on, external power is on, is now off. Engine and APU fire test was checked, APU is on and APU air is on. 1, 2 and 1, 3 isolations are on and the packs are also on. Tank 2 pumps are on, 1 and 3 pumps are off. and all transits are off, so that is correct. Pre-flight. Emergency equipment was checked, nav equipment checked, oxygen and interphone. We can check the oxygen. That is checked on the captain's side and checked on the first officer side. So oxygen is checked. Ground proximity warning was checked. So let's continue with the preparation checklist. Circuit breakers are checked, gear pins stowed, serviceability checked, no smoking, seat belts are on, overhead panel is checked, glare shield panel is set and checked, altimeters should be 1030, that is not yet set, so good that we run the checklist, so 1030 on both the captain and first officer side, so set and cross-checked. Instrument panel is checked, FMS is checked and set. Flap takeoff selector, that's another issue. You have to set your flap takeoff selector, that's this one, to the desired amount of flaps. Our desired amount is flaps 15. So that is set. Communications is set, radar tilted up, off right now. The transponder is 5621 and set to transponder mode. Aileron and rudder trim set. Crew briefing is completed. So that's the preparation checklist completed. Before start checklists, parking brakes are set, seat belts on, ship's papers on board, no TOC is checked, fuel quantity. Let's go to the fuel page. 17,100 kilos is on board and that is checked correct. Performance data is checked and set. Windows and doors are closed. Now DFD are off, by the way. That's the digital flight data recorder, and that will be off when the parking brake is set and when the engines are not yet started. And when the engines are started, you're taxiing and you're just holding and you switch on the parking brake, this message will go on. That's perfectly normal. Windows and doors closed. Yellow door select is automatic. Well, that's not required. This is for the passenger version. Aux pump 1 is on. Ignition system alpha. Beacon lights on. Ignition is set. Is that all correct? Yep, we are good to go. So let's call in the pushback tug.
Ground to cockpit. Toes driving up.
So air manual 1213 isolations are on. Packs are off. Bleed airs are okay. Fuel management 1, 2 and 3 pumps. If you set it to manual, they are on. We'll start it automatically, so we'll leave it like this. It will work. So before start checklist is completed.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect. Set parking brake.
Brake set. Oh, by the way, I had an issue on a previous flight where the right main gear wheel brakes would overheat all the time. I figured out that it had something to do with my hardware. So if you want to overcome that, go to your pedal settings and edit the response curve so that the first little bit of input isn't transferred to the sim. It really helped me to solve the brake overheat issue. But anyway, let's focus on the flight at hand. Isn't she lovely? What an airplane, I really, really love it. Such a beautiful design. Oh, we have to get rid of the wheel jocks, by the way, so let's go plugins.
How connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
So chocks are removed, and now we are good to go. Right, brakes released, clear to push.
Starting pushback, and you may start the engines.
Starting sequence will be 3, 1, 2. Starting number 3. Okay, so to start the engine, just pull the starter. Then you will see in a minute the N2 is now rising. And as soon as N2 reaches 15, that is 15%, we'll open the fuel flow. Really nice animation on the engine start. I think the engine sounds can do with an upgrade. Maybe someone can make a sound pack for this one. It would be much appreciated. But anyway, engine number 3 is stable, so let's start engine number 1. %, N2, fuel flow open, fuel flow is on, EGT is rising, N1 is rising. Now as soon as N2 starts to reach approximately 45–46%, you will see that the starter will cut out.
Operation complete. Please set parking brake.
So starter cut out on 1, start engine number 2. So 15% N2, fuel flow on. Fuel flow open, EGT rising, N1 is rising. Starter cutout on number 2. Okay, we have 3 good engine starts, brake set, clear to disconnect.
Disconnecting tow, stand by.
Okay, engine number 2 is stable. The trim required is 4.8. 4.8 is set. If you want to know the control bindings, read the manual, it's all in there. So 4.8 set.
Tower is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the left. I'll see you next time. Have a safe flight.
Thanks for your help. See you next time. Bye bye. So set the configuration page in here, and now you can do a flight control check. So full left. Make sure that all the control surfaces are green. Full right. Neutral. Down. Up. Neutral, and the rudder. Full left. Full right. Neutral. Clear signal is received. Now, I like to have the configuration page in here also during taxi, because it gives you information about both tire pressures, that's the numbers inside the ovals, and the brake temperature, that's the numbers above here. Now, as mentioned before, I had an issue with the wheel brakes overheating all the time. It had to do with my hardware, so in case you skipped the video till this point, check your control, your response curves, and make sure that the first 0.5 or 0.4 is not read as an input, and that will, in my case at least, it solved the issue of overheating wheel brakes on taxi. So having done all this, let's switch the runway turn-off lights on. Nose gear light is set to taxi. APU air can be switched off. The APU can be switched off. And we can arm the spoilers, set the parking brakes to, reject the takeoff. Spoilers armed. So, APU, that is spooling down, so that's off. Electric panel is checked. Is it? Is checked. Spoilers armed. Auto brakes. Takeoff. Step trim 4.8 is set. Ground equipment is removed. Hydraulic, air and fuel panel are no lights. APU is spooling down, so that light will illuminate in a few minutes. So before taxi checklist is completed, let's set the flaps. And while we taxi to the runway, we'll do a quick briefing for the takeoff. So we're going to take off runway 07 center. We'll take the right turn November 15, then a second right onto November, first left to Lima 20 or 21 to taxi onto runway 07 center. On the takeoff roll, we will abort takeoff for all messages that we, all unexpected messages that we receive, warnings, etc. Between 80 knots and V1 I will only abort for fire warnings or massive control issues. And at V1 of course we will proceed unless we lose power on all engines or on all control surfaces. That's the only reason why we abort after V1, because the airplane would be unflyable. It's better to skid off the end of the runway than go into the air with an uncontrollable airplane. Departure is the Marin 5 Echo, so we'll climb out at 068 until we reach the Frankfurt am Main, Fox Mike VOR, then a left turn heading 356 to Odaga, Tcas Alerts to Marin. It is set in the flight management, or the McDo flight management computer. It was checked. Initial climb altitude 5000 is set, initial heading 068 is set, and speed limit below 10,000 feet is 250 knots, that is set. 174 SRV 2 plus 10, is standby in the auto thrust system. And that is the takeoff briefing. Any questions? Okay, let's spool up the engines. And start our taxi. So Taxial Checklist, flaps 15 set and indicated. Flight controls were checked. Takeoff data is checked. V1 137, rotate 159, V2 164. Nav systems is set and the crew briefing is completed. So Taxial Checklist completed. Now in terms of taxiing on the straights, you can taxi up to 20 knots. When you make a 90-degree turn, maximum speed is 10 knots. 45-degree turn, maximum speed is 14 knots. Be very careful not to overheat the brakes. They are prone to that in this add-on. But if you set your toe brake, like I demonstrated already 2 times in this video, you should be alright with the brake temperature for the wheel brakes on taxi. So turning right. And then it is a left turn in here. Oh, missed that one. No, we haven't. So let's take Lima 21, turn left in here. To hold short for runway 07 center. Let's set the transponder to TARA. Set the traffic in here. We have an airplane coming in. Just have to check whether that's 7 center or 7 right. Until we have that figured out, we're just gonna hold short here. The hold short point runway 07 center at Lima 21. So bring the airplane to a complete stop, set the parking brake. That will have the DFDR message, also the master caution alert in there. There's an airplane coming in. Oh, this is an interesting runway configuration. And it's a heavy, a company 748. It looks like it's heading for 7 right. So that's not gonna bother us. So let's release the parking brake. So transponder TARA, let's switch the high init lights on, that's the strobes.
Approaching 07 center.
There's no warnings in here, so that's good. And let's say that we are cleared for takeoff, so we set the landing lights on. And we can run the before takeoff checklist. So the cabin is ready, all doors are closed. Transponder TARA, EAD, no messages. Exterior lights set. takeoff clearance. Let's say that we are cleared for takeoff, so that is received before takeoff checklist completed.
On runway 07, center.
Okay, and here we are on the runway, lined up. So we are lined up with the runway. We press the auto flight button. You can see that the white line surrounding the TO clamp is now off. And what we'll do, we'll verify that the radio altitude is set to 200, should have done that earlier, and that the heading is in magnetic mode. And now we can just run up the engines. We'll set the timer to active. Forward pressure on the yoke. Engines are stabilized, so takeoff thrust. And now the auto throttle system is setting the takeoff thrust, so thrust set, airspeed active, 80 knots, release forward pressure on the yoke. Now it would be cool if they could implement some call-outs on takeoff runs. That would be really immersive. V1, rotate.
Altimeter setting. Altimeter
Positive
setting.
rate, gear
Altimeter
up.
setting. Altimeter setting.
Now, as you can
Altimeter
hear,
setting. Altimeter setting.
I have an
Altimeter
issue
setting.
when I take off
Altimeter
from
setting.
Frankfurt
Altimeter setting.
that I keep
Altimeter
this
setting.
continuous altimeter setting
Altimeter
call out
setting.
until I reach
Altimeter
approximately
setting.
4,000
Altimeter
feet,
setting.
which is
Altimeter
quite
setting.
annoying and not very
Altimeter setting.
realistic. So this
Altimeter
also seems to
setting.
be a bug
Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting.
that I will
Altimeter
report on
setting.
the
Altimeter
forums.
setting. Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting.
So we are
Altimeter
at
setting.
400
Altimeter
feet,
setting.
so
Altimeter
nav,
setting.
profile,
Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting.
auto flight.
Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting. Altimeter
And we can
setting.
see now that it is
Altimeter
pitching,
setting. Altimeter
following
setting.
nav,
Altimeter setting.
climb
Altimeter
thrust.
setting. Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting.
And now the
Altimeter
airplane will
setting.
start to make a
Altimeter
left-hand
setting.
turn onto this
Altimeter setting.
departure.
Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting. Altimeter
shut
setting.
up.
Altimeter setting. 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 Altimeter
And
setting.
now the airplane is
Altimeter
pitching
setting.
to increase the speed to
Setting.
250
Altimeter
knots.
setting. Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting. Altimeter setting.
So, let's see. The QNH is now standard.
Altitude.
Let's climb to fly level 180.
Stabilizer motion.
Set this one also to 1013.
Stabilizer motion.
Now, by the way, what you just saw me doing real quick, I forgot to do that initially, is set the transition altitude in the performance page. Should always do that. Forgot to check that page. But anyway, we are on the path. We can retract flaps. We can disarm the spoilers. And we can retract the slats. And here we are. I'm gonna go for an external flyby, so you might want to cover your ears. Don't know how loud this will be. Actually quite alright. And right now the airplane is climbing like a homesick angel. Despite quite heavy cargo, we have little fuel, so we're nowhere near the maximum takeoff weight. Now, what I always like to do is switch on the anti-ice system, even despite the fact that there is no direct need for that right now. We are below 10 degrees, but there's no visible moisture. We have passed 10,000 feet, so let's switch off the landing lights as well as the runway turn-off lights. Seatbelts, auto. Let's check that the auto brakes are off. Right, so we can run the after takeoff checklist. So the gear is up, spoilers are disarmed, auto brakes off,
Stabilizer motion.
flaps and slats up and retracted, seatbelts auto, exterior lights set, and the altimeters are standard set and cross-checked. After takeoff checklist completed. They really rotate up their game if you compare it to the MD-80, because in this airplane we finally have the ability to set the nav displays to different ranges, as well as set different pages on the FMCs. That was not possible in the MD-80, and that was always something that, well, it took a little bit of the immersion away from that add-on for me personally. So I really like that Rotate have done this, and that we're now capable to set any screen the way we like it. It's much better. So let's continue to climb to flight level 240. That is our cruise altitude. While we fly over this beautiful part of Germany. Now, this is another thing that I noticed.
Clear of conflict.
Get a lot of these Tcas alerts during cruise, even when there's no airplane nearby. And you will see sometimes this green turn indicator come online and offline on the nav display when there's no need for it. So there's still some things that need a little bit of work on. Now the biggest issue, by the way, is that the heading mode is not working as it should be. And that has got something to do with magnetic north. As soon as you want to make a turn, for instance, we are now heading 004. If I were to make a left-hand turn with the heading mode to 320, the airplane would turn to the right because it cannot go from 0. It doesn't understand that it's shorter from 0 to 32 over the left. So there's something in that logic that isn't working correctly, and that strikes me as very odd. because the airplane has been in beta testing for a couple of months, and I really wonder what the beta testers have done that they didn't notice that. I mean, it's such a basic feature on any airplane autopilot system that I'm sure that's one of the first things that you check. And if you fly the airplane, especially if you let yourself being radar factored in and out of any place, I guess that's something that you would simulate in a beta testing stage. But apparently it hasn't been done. It wasn't noticed, at least. Not by the beta testers, it seems to be. But everyone else who bought the airplane in the first days after the release have encountered this issue. So it's quite a mystery to me how it's possible that they've missed that. But as you can see, as long as you're on auto flights, following the nav profile, the airplane is doing alright. Now, some people have reporting oscillating issues. As you can see, the airplane, it's quite slow. It's a heavy airplane. By the way, the manual flying with this thing is awesome. It really is. But as you can see, it's zigzagging and making a little bit of S-turns when it's past a waypoint. Don't know how realistic that is. I know that this thing has, well, what will it be? Probably 80s technologies. It was, I think, first released in the early 90s. 1990s, that is. So most of the development would have taken place in the 1980s. And in the 1980s, computer technology was not as far developed as it is right now. The biggest improvement in computer technology, I think, was made in the, well, mid-second half of the 1990s. So the airplane is a little bit less accurate in terms of its navigation system than a very modern airplane, but I don't think it should be this extreme. But if you are a real-world MD11 pilot and you know that you happen to know that it actually is like this, please enlighten us and leave a comment stating just that. But I think it needs a little work on the flight director part. So let's go for an external view. By the way, I have my sim still running in OpenGL. And initially I had the reshaders installed, but reshade with Vulkan just resulted in so many Vulkan device lost errors and unexpected crashes that I've decided to uninstall reshade and switch back to OpenGL, and now the sim is much more stable, knock on wood, but so far so good. See, the airplane is just flying completely stable. We have a 22 knot crosswinds coming in from the right.
Monitor vertical speed.
There we have one of those ghost Tcas alerts, which I think needs to take, well, I haven't switched the weather radar on yet, There's not much to see out there in terms of spectacular weather, but we can switch it on. You will see the weather radar. Should be an indication in here blinking that the weather radar is on. Let's see, what did I do wrong? What we can do is start to take a look at the arrival into Amsterdam. Now we already altered the route, so that is correct. So I'm not going to bother too much about that. But we do have to take a look at the radios, the altitudes, etc. So let's just start by setting the correct ILS already. That's 11905 for Alpha Bravo Alpha. So what we'll do is we'll jump back into the flight management system. Press the nav radio page, and in here you can enter the ILS information. What's most convenient is just enter the 3-letter identifier, so Alpha Bravo Alpha. And it will be the top one at North 52 East 4, that's Amsterdam, frequency 11195. Having a course of 003. Well, it says 002 according to the chart, but that is alright. The minimums for a category D aircraft are 238 barometric, so we'll just round that off to 250 feet barometric. So we'll switch this one to baro, and then 250 feet. You might wonder why I'm already doing this right now. We are still roughly 60 miles away from our top of descent. Well, if you have the time, do it right now. You cannot, there's some things that you just can set and you cannot forget them anymore during your descent when you're busy monitoring the descent, etc. So hurry when you've got the time, so you have time when you've got to hurry. That's the literal translation of Dutch saying. So we set the ILS information, we set the minimums. Let's take a look at the approach phase. At 35, at flaps 35, we should be landing at a speed of 157 knots. That's quite high, so I want to go flaps 50 because the airplane is heavy. And that will give us a VREF of 151. Now go around. There's no waypoints that we need there, so let's just leave this. So flaps 50 landing, 151 knots. Elevation -11, that is correct. Runway length 11,155. 11,155 is correct, elevation -11. So this information is all good. We have already altered the route. So basically all we have to do now is monitor that everything is normal and stable until we reach our top of descent, which will be in roughly 50 nautical miles. Now what I noticed on the descent in the auto flight is that it is quite aggressive. It will fly up until it reaches the top of descent point that is indicated by this magenta arrow, and then it will dive quite steeply with auto brakes to the desired altitude. So let's take a look at the vertical profile. At NORQ, fly level 240. Then we'll descend until we reach RTIP at 8,000, fly level 085. but let's say I want to reach RTIP at flight level 070. Let's see what happens if we enter that. So top of descent is now a little bit sooner. And 2,000 feet to intercept at 669. Now it already wants me at 2,000 feet at 665. I find that quite soon, because that means we have to fly low and level all this way, and basically what you want is a continuous descent approach. Now I think that on this stretch we will be flying 220 knots. So that's 3.6 miles per minute. So this stretch will roughly take us 2.5 minutes from INBAM to this one. Then we have 665 to 667, that will be 200 knots. That's 3.3 miles per minute. So that's taking us 3 minutes to fly from 665 to 667. Basically, I want to be at 665 at 6,000 feet. Then descend at 1,000 feet per minute to 3,000 feet in air. Continue the descent to 2,000 feet and reducing the speed to 180 knots. Then establish on there. So that will be 667. Will be 3,000 feet. 665 will be 6,000 feet. Six 668, that will be 2,500. I think this is a much nicer profile. And basically we can say that we want to be RTIP probably even 10,000. Let's just leave that at 8,500. Let's see how it handles this. I'm not gonna try to intervene as less as I possibly can with the VNAV. See how the airplane handles, but side note to that, in real life pilots hardly ever use VNAV all the way down. Usually ATC messes up your planning with detours, other altitudes to avoid other traffic, so it's not uncommon for pilots to use vertical speed or open descent much more than VNAV. I noticed a lot of posts on Facebook and forums where a lot of sim pilots always claim that VNAV isn't working correct and it's not accurate and blah blah blah. Well, in real life VNAV, it's a luxury if you can use it from top of descent all the way down. Especially in more busy airports, it's not uncommon to use vertical speed or flight level change or open descent to change your altitude levels instead of VNAV. And also a rate of descent initially of 3,000 feet per minute, 4,000 feet per minute is not uncommon at all. Some people think that when the airplane is descending at 4,000 feet per minute it nosedives down. Well, it does, but it's not uncommon for an airplane to descend at 4,000 feet per minute. Especially in the initial phase of the descent. When you get lower to the ground, you might want to ease things up a little bit, because you also got to lose speed. But when you're on top of climb, flight level 350, you have to start your descent. 4,000 feet per minute is not uncommon at all. It all depends on the mood that ATC is in. What we are going to do is set the initial descent, say that we are clear to descend to flight level 080. So we'll just alter the number in here. Seat belts on. Verify that the windshield anti-ice is on. Well, terrain clearance, well, there's not much of a problem with that when you're flying into the Netherlands. It's all flat. We don't have mountains, so that is easy. And we have basically now come to the point where we can start our descent. So let's run the descent checklists. Windshield anti-ice is set, terrain clearance is checked.
Traffic.
Status is checked, there are no strange warnings in the panel. And the approach preparation is completed, so descent checklist completed.
Monitor vertical speed.
Now we do have proper Tcas. I couldn't see him, but I could hear him. That means it was close. Now,
Clear of conflict.
Now what you saw was that the autopilot system was withholding the airplane from descending until that Tcas message was away. That was actually pretty nice. I don't know if that's realistic, but it was a nice touch. And what we have to do now is we have to add some drag to allow the airplane to maintain the current speed. So we'll set speed brakes out. And we are now descending at 2,300 feet per minute. Nothing strange about that. Speed 33. And it wants the speed at 305. You can see that by the magenta point on the speed tape. So it wants more drag to able to reduce the speed. So let's give it more drag.
Climb, crossing climb.
And now you can see that the speed is decreasing.
Clear of conflict.
This was another of those ghost Tcas messages. Sim has to load in some of the scenery surrounding Amsterdam, so it's usual that I get a little dip in performance at this stage of a flight into the Netherlands. That's more the scenery than it is this add-on. I got it in almost any airplane that I fly into the Netherlands. So I basically run you through the approach. We're going to fly this transition via IMBAM. We set the routes, we set the vertical profile. I think we're a little bit on the high side right now. And once we have landed in Amsterdam, we're gonna taxi to the Sierra apron. So it's gonna be either Echo 2 or Echo 5. Then it's taxiway Bravo, cross runway 24 at Sierra 7 to Sierra 8. Then onto the Sierra apron. Now the airplane wants to decelerate to 250 knots. It wants more drag. Reaching 8,000 feet just after RTIP, which is on profile because RTIP should be 8,500. It's always nice to fly over the area where you have lived for almost 30 years. This is the glider field near Biddinghuizen. Lelystad Airport, Lelystad, this is the town of Dronten. Zwifterband, Ketelhaven, Kampen. This is Emmeloord, Urk. Always a joy to fly in this region. For me. Anyway, let's focus on the descent. We are now at 250 knots. We are keeping our descent 10,000 feet, so the landing lights go on. And let's also switch the runway turn-off lights on already, so we cannot forget that. And let's say that we can continue our descent to 6,000 feet. This is a 15-mile stretch, and we only have to lose 2,000 feet per minute, or 2,000 feet. So what we're going to do is see what the airplane does. RTIP 8,500. It is keeping that constraint. So let's arm the speed brakes or the spoilers. What I also still have to deep dive in is the correct speeds for sleds and flap setting. I'm unfamiliar with this airplane at that point, so I'm just making a best guess in here. Now GE at 260, that's the maximum gear extend speed. And so my guess is this is also the maximum speed to have flaps 15. I'm gonna set the sleds, so flaps 1. Now this is the point where the airplane will start its descent from 8,700 down to flight level 060. And let's grab some weather information for the correct QNH in Amsterdam.
Echo Hotel Alpha Mike airport information Romeo 1255 Zulu weather wind 038 at 7 visibility 10,000 sky clear temperature 172.4 QNH 1032 advise on initial contact that you have information Romeo.
So 1032 for the QNH.
Echo Hotel.
Now the scroll function in this airplane is actually quite sensitive and a little bit on the fast side for my liking. I would like it a little bit slower. When you give a great input on your scroll button, it will just go through the roof. So sometimes it's a bit of a headache to get the correct setting that you want. but that's also just a little bit of getting used to. So right now we are approaching INBOM. Let's just INBOM. Didn't I say I want to be at 6,000 down there? No, I didn't. Alpha Mike 665 was 6,000, so that's that one. Now, as you can see, the plane wants to fly pretty long until it reaches a point where it has to dive quite aggressively. Right now the airplane starts to descend 700 feet per minute. Let's see if it keeps this rate or that it's going to level off and then go down faster again, because if it's maintaining this rate, that's fine by me. Let's set the VORs on. We have Sierra Papa Lima, we are 20 miles out, so let's reduce our speed to 220 knots. To do that, first pull the knob, that will give you a value in the screen. Dial that down to the desired value, in our case 220, and then pull the knob again. And you will see that this indicator here will be filled white instead of just outlined. And then the airplane will start to reduce speed to 220 knots. And we can add a little bit of drag to make sure that the airplane decelerates a little bit faster. We are nicely descending 700 feet per minute. So spoilers, speed brakes are retracted. Let's say that we can continue our descent to 3,000 feet. And let's reduce our speed to 200 knots. And add in a little bit of drag.
Stabilize their motion.
Sleds are extended, we are 200 knots. Let's set flaps 15, we are quite heavy, and I think the nose, the pitch up attitude is quite high. And that will also assist in giving the airplane more drag, judging by the looks of it. So spoilers disarmed, and spoilers are armed, 200 knots. This should take us approximately 3 minutes. The airplane is descending at 1400 feet per minute. That is perfectly normal. It should level off slightly before that waypoint, and that's actually quite convenient, and we can start our deceleration to 180 knots. Let's just set this one to 2000. You can see I haven't touched my vertical speed, and the airplane is actually descending quite alright.
Traffic, traffic, traffic.
There we have another one of those ghost Tcas messages. And now you can see that the airplane maintains 1,000 feet per minute for the final 1,000 feet to 3,000 over at Alpha Mike 667.
Traffic.
It's 3 miles out. Let's start to decelerate to 180 knots. And set flaps to 28. So flaps 28, speed 180. Now this is also a little bit of a thing. When you reach a waypoint, first it goes for a very brief period, just a second, it goes to the opposite direction. Don't know why it does that.
Traffic.
So speed 180. And we are continuing to descend to 2,500. Let's set our auto brake to medium, because the airplane is actually quite heavy, so we'll need a lot of braking power.
Traffic.
There is no traffic, so don't yell at that. So the Tcas system also needs a little bit of work on, judging by the looks of it. And we continue down to 2,180 knots.
Altimeter setting.
She's not starting again, is she? It's 1033, it's set and cross-checked. Alright, so right now we are starting to approach. So let's arm the approach mode.
Traffic.
Localizer is armed. Now what I did notice on my previous flight is that the localizer glide slope information on the PFD is correct, but if you go to the approach mode screen, the localizer information on this needle is not correct. The needle will indicate that the airplane is left of the runway, while it isn't. So here's also a little bit of a bug that I think the team should take a look at. Let's see if it does it again on this flight. If it does, I have just reproduced the issue. We are 9 miles out, so let's start to reduce our speed to 160. Select gear down. Set the landing light, nose gear light on. Select flaps 35. Gear is down, locked for greens, and we had an approach speed of 156 at flaps 50. So flaps 50, speed 156. We are aligned with the runway now. As you can see clearly here, the localizer is captured. The flight director is all right. But here on the approach display, it's indicating me that I have to turn to the right to get to the runway. And I have a feeling that Traffic Global is messing up the runway use again. Well, anyway. Approach checks, exterior lights set, landing data checked, nav systems, crew briefing completed, altimeters 1033 set and cross-checked, landing checklists, altimeters set, gear down, spoilers armed, auto brakes medium set, flaps 50 set, EAD checked, no warnings, FCP Speed 156, missed approach, altitude 2000 feet is set. That is the landing checklist completed. So if you want to take over manual control, you have to move your physical thrust levers. You get these yellow ghosts levers. Lay them over the levers in the virtual flight deck. Press the thrust disconnect, you get the ATS message. You can do that with your mouse or make a control binding.
1000.
And let's also disengage the autopilot.
Autopilot.
Press it again to silence the alarm. And right now the airplane is nice and easy, flying towards runway 36 right here in Amsterdam.
Approaching
So VREF
36
151.
right.
Terrain.
So we are a little bit fast. 7 knot crosswind coming in from the right.
500.
Check. Oh, now we are a little bit high. Close down thrust levers. Correcting for the altitude. Not too
Up
fast.
300. Minimum.
Continue landing.
200.
We're a little bit too fast.
50, 40, 30, 20,
Close.
10,
Multi-attitudes. Reverse. And apply reverse. Oh, reverses can be stowed again. Okay, let's vacate the runway here. Set the auto brakes off. Welcome to Amsterdam with the RotateSim MD-11. Set nose gear light to taxi. Landing lights off. We can start the APU. And stow the spoilers. And retract the flaps. Weather radar is off. Transponder TA only. High init lights can be switched off. And let's taxi to left. I think I said in the briefing that it was taxiway Bravo. It should be taxiway Alpha for the clockwise direction. So let's just taxi to the Sierra apron, turning left in here. As you can see, on quite a busy Amsterdam, I'm getting 25 frames per second. In terms of performance in Amsterdam on my system, that is definitely not bad. And let's follow the KLM 777 in front of us. That's probably taxiing towards runway 24, judging by the looks of it. let's turn left in here. With that 777 commencing its takeoff roll. We just have to wait for it to be airborne, and then we can cross runway 24 for Sierra 8 on the other side there to taxi to the Sierra apron. So let's just switch the high intensity lights on and set the transponder to TARA because we are going to cross an active runway. Let's say tower has cleared us to cross runway 24. Now we have to take a close look on the brake temperatures. At 550 degrees or more you will get the brake overheat warning message.
Approaching 24.
Check. We are cleared to cross. High init lights and transponder to TARA are set. No traffic on final. It's not a runway 24 in Amsterdam is not often used as a landing runway. There is a procedure that you fly the ILS for runway 27, then break off with a left turn to land on 24. I've experienced that as a pilot once, as a passenger once. I'm not a pilot. It's actually quite spectacular. One of the more fun approaches into Amsterdam for the pilots, I think. Captain had a big smile on his face when he was saying goodbye to the passengers. So we had a lovely day then. Anyway, the runway is crossed, so high intensity lights off. TA only on the transponder. Now I'm using the Aerosoft Amsterdam scenery, but there is an update available for it on the explain.org forums. Just read it carefully. You have to buy a payware library. And you have to read very careful through the installation instructions for that package. But if you manage to get it to work, it's not that difficult. Just read carefully. You get this updated Amsterdam layout, which is actually pretty nice. Now, the airplane has a tendency to speed a little bit, so let's just apply a little bit of toe brakes. Keep that speed at 14. Or lower. Let's lower down to 10 knots and take the bay in here. So nose gear lights off, runway turn off lights off. Let's turn left in here. And let's take a look from the outside. We are almost perfectly on the line. And on the brakes, parking brake set. Now we have that brake overheat message. Especially on the center main gear, it's now actually a little bit on the high. It will cool down quite rapidly from here. But anyway, welcome to Amsterdam with the RotateSim MD11. So Taxial Checklist, spoilers were retracted, auto brakes off, flaps slats up retracted, radar is off, transponder can be set to standby. Exterior lights set, APU is on. Stabilizer trim has to be set to 3.
Stabilizer motion. Stabilizer motion.
Engine number 2, fuel. Oh, we can switch off engine number 2 when taxiing, by the way. Anyway, we didn't do that. So number 2 is off. And switch off number 3 as well as number 1. Seatbelts off. So the APU is on. Let's first run a replay of that landing. Very late touchdown. But it was smooth. Was a nice touchdown though. Alright, anyway, let's go back to the... So when you get back from the replay mode... Oh, there we are. So after parking, parking brake is set. Electric power is checked, fuel switches are off. Seatbelts is off. Exterior lights, we can switch the beacon light off, so that is set. Air APU is on. We can switch the IRS off. The windshield anti-ice and the anti-ice in general can be switched off. and we can call the ground crew for chocks, ground power units and cockpit stairs, as well as load. Open the cockpit door. No. When you get back from a replay mode, the spoiler remains out. And with the external power engaged, we can switch off the APU power, we can switch off the APU air, and switch the APU master off. Dear Simmers, RotateSim MD-11. I really like the airplane. There is some bugs, they need to be addressed. It's a mystery to me why some of these bugs still occur after months of beta testing. But anyway, as you can see in this video, it is possible to make an A to B flight with it. I think it works rather nice. Read the manuals carefully, and let's wait for RotateSim to release the hotfix for the heading mode. And well, let's hope that someone comes up with an engine sound pack, and then I think we have a wonderful add-on on our hands. And this thing has everything in it to become one of the best add-ons, and I think it's a little bit of a shame that it wasn't released as the best add-on yet. If I can remember when Rotate launched the MD80, they had some issues. Not some, they had a lot of issues, and I really had hoped that this release would be much smoother for them, because in the end they turned the MD80 into a wonderful add-on, and I'm pretty sure and pretty confident that they will do the same with the MD11. It's already nice, and it can only become better with a couple of updates to the heading mode and to the sound system. So if you want to buy it, it's entirely up to you. In its present state, I wouldn't fly it online, because you are not able to comply to all the factors that ATC will give you because of that heading issue. But it is fun to fly, and there's so much study to be done with this airplane to fly it properly. I have reinstalled FSX with the PMDG MD11 to get access again to the manuals of the PMDG MD11. They are far more extensive. This airplane ships with a lot of manuals, by the way. So there are system descriptions for all sort of systems. There's limitation and normal checklists. And there's a tutorial flight that I would strongly suggest you to follow first. Yeah, with all that, it's just, I think it's a wonderful add-on. I cannot say anything else. It's a shame that it has a couple of bugs. I'm pretty sure they will be ironed out shortly. Yeah, and I hope this video gave you a good impression of what the airplane is capable of already. And to me, it's now a matter of testing and seeing if I get the LNAV issue again on a medium flight or on a long haul flight. But if they fix that and you can use this airplane overnight on long hauls, then this will be my #1 long haul plane for the rest of this year, I think. I really love it. I think that was clear. I hope you liked the video. If you have any tips, tricks, comments, questions whatsoever, please leave them in the comment section below. As usual, do so in a respectful manner. I hope to see you all again another day on another video. And until that time, stay healthy, stay safe, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.